Hello, Policy 610 students. Today we will be going over discussion section 1, which will cover the very basics of R using RStudio. But before I get into that, I want to briefly mention that all of the discussion materials and some other reference materials will be available online publicly via my GitHub. And I will provide this link in Elms, but I just wanted to let you know that everything that I cover in the discussion sections, as well as most of the code that we write, will be available on this website. So even after you graduate from the 610 course, so to speak, you can always look back to see the materials that we covered in this section if you are ever find yourself using R again. So without further ado, let's get into the discussion section today. So click on the discussion section folder and discussion intro 1. I'll provide all these links for you later. And today we will be going over the discussion 1 underscore intro.ipynb. And this is just a presentation, so that's why I'm using it. And so first we will just cover the basics of what the advantages of using R are. First and foremost, it's free, so that's very convenient if you are looking to collaborate with other people. You know that they can always download it and they're able to share work with you. There's a number of other advantages that I think are pretty obvious, at least when compared to Excel. It's just very easy to manipulate the data and reproduce that manipulation, which is the important point. It's very easy to download data directly from the internet. You don't have to download the Excel file and then upload it into Excel. You can just download it directly. You can visualize data. You can even build models, including regression, machine learning, neural networks, AI, all that fancy stuff you hear in the news. It's actually not that complicated and quite easy to run. But today we're going to focus on how to import a CSV file, more or less. That's a common theme. And when we import a CSV file, an Excel file, into R, we actually call that not an Excel sheet, obviously, because we're not using Excel. We actually call that a data frame. But it's more or less the same thing as an Excel sheet, so you can think of it that way. In many cases, this data frame has rows and columns. Of course, it always has rows and columns, but usually the rows are people or households or countries or sometime time if you're using it to maybe analyze stocks or something like that. And the columns are other variables like GDP, life expectancy, and whatnot. There are a number of ways that you can actually run R, not just RStudio, which we will be using, but for our class, we will be using RStudio, but not on your computer, in the cloud. So we are going to send you a link via Elms, and what you will be doing is to register your RStudio Cloud account. And if you had gone to the RStudio Cloud account through the link we provided, you will be automatically added into a class section where you will be able to see all of the code that I will be going over today, just with a click of a button, and I'll show you that in a second. So important, you need to follow the link that we provide you to download RStudio Cloud. It's very easy to use that way. You don't have to set it up on your computer, and you can avoid all these headaches that a lot of students often have. Just for reference, but not for our course, to be clear, you can also run RStudio by downloading the software. Now I will show you how to use RStudio Cloud. After you've been invited to our class, you should be able to see that on the left side, you have a PLCY 610 section. So what you want to do is click on that, and then you will be able to find the exact code that we use today in this lecture. So you will just click on this discussion 1 intro, and it should open the exact code that I will be going over. Now, the nice thing is that it saves your progress. It can also allow me to see it will save your progress. I show that here. And then I can also go into your code directly if you're having any problems and actually look at your code. So it's really convenient for me if you're having questions about your code in RStudio. But without further ado, I just want to explain what it is that you're seeing in this discussion 1 intro code. So the link for what it is that I just went over here on the left side is actually just right here if you wanted to check that out and use it side by side as I'm doing right now. So we will just jump forward a little bit here. The very basics of RStudio are that the top left of your screen will be where you write your code. The bottom left will be the console where that code will be printed. The top right will be where your saved materials go, and the bottom right is all the files in your file folder. Now, a lot of times when you launch RStudio, it will actually not have this code section open. It will probably look something like this with some writing here. What you want to do is just tap this little dual window screen, and then it will be able to show both at the same time. Now, when you want to run code, you should either use this run button or highlight a line of code. So let me just do that here. Let me just do it up here so you can see it very clearly. Print PLCY 610, hello. If you want to run that line of code, you can either highlight it or just put your cursor next to it, and you click run, and it will show up below. A general rule of thumb is that blue is good, red is bad. So if you were to try to print what I just printed without quotes, that will actually have an error, and it shows that there is an error below. So in general, blue means it ran, red means it did not run, which is actually a problem for many students who don't really know if their code worked or not. So it's just a general rule of thumb, but blue is generally good. That's what you should remember. Now, you can also use comments with a hashtag, and that way you can actually just type notes to yourself. So that's what I did here in this code. I'm telling you that these are the very basics. I'm telling you how you should run code. And so you can remind yourself what you're doing. So if you wanted to print all the lines of code at once, you just highlight them all, and you press Command Return if you're on a Mac, or this Run button here, and everything should have run down there. If you want to clear out all of the stuff that you printed, you can click this little sweeper button here, and it should get rid of it. So when you want to actually save some code, I can show you how to do that right down here in section 1. Let's just get rid of some of this material here. When you want to save a line of code, you type in the name of whatever it is that you want to name it, the equal sign, and then you type in on the right side whatever it is that you want to save. So I'm just saving what's called a string or some text. And so when we run this line of code here, what you'll notice is that it actually pops up in the top right. So that is one way you can check whether your code worked or not. Again, it comes up as blue, so that's a good sign. If we wanted to now see what that string we can do with that, what you can do is just type in that new string, this time without the equal sign, and just run that, and what you'll see is that it actually ran whatever it is that we saved. So I typed in new string and it printed out this is a string. So a lot of people have trouble with this because they don't either put a space when they shouldn't, they don't put the equal sign, or they don't put the quotes. If you don't do that and you try to run it, what you'll notice is that there's an error. So we don't want that. You always want to make sure there's an equal sign. You always want to make sure that whatever you name it, new, let's just name it new, that you have the equal sign there, and that it will pop up on the right, top right, if it was successful. So now we want to actually try to import some Excel data. So just a reminder that the data should always be in the same folder as what you're working from, and if it's not, you need to specify that. So we will try to read this little vote.csv file, which is actually already in our current workspace. So what we'll do is, let me erase this here, and all we need to do is actually type in read dot, let's go down here a little bit to 2.1. We type in read.csv, and the name of the CSV folder will go inside the read.csv function. So this is actually technically called a function, and it will be in quotes. So when we try to do that, it reads that data down below, but you'll notice that nothing new popped up in the top right, and that's because we didn't include an equal sign. So if we want to save that and we want to name it df, short for data frame, we can do df equals read.csv, and what you'll notice is that df now pops up on the top right. If we want to look at that data, there's a number of ways we can do that. We can click on this little button here. It will show us the whole entire df data, which kind of looks like an Excel. But there are also a lot of other ways that you can show this. Let me just kind of clean this up here. So when we move on to 2.2, that shows you actually how to upload a CSV if it's in a different folder. So in that, I won't go too much into detail because all of the files I will include for you will just be in this top folder. So all you have to do is what we did here in 2.1. But if it's in a different folder, say in a subfolder, you can type the name of that subfolder / and then the name of that file within that subfolder. So you'll notice here that we have this arrest.csv file that we can try to upload, and all we do is within the quotes, we provide the name of that folder and then a / and then the name of that file. So if we do this and run line 2.2, you should see that we get this df arrest up in the top right, which contains some data on arrest. So if we don't want to actually look at the data frame by just looking at the whole thing, we can actually just look at pieces of it. So this is actually the material that will be pretty important for your assignment. The basic thing to do is just to inspect the first couple lines of that data frame in here in 3.1. So when we want to see the first 3 lines, or let's just use this. Actually, the basics is just head, so that's the name of the function. Inside that head function is our data frame. You just run that, and what you'll notice is that down below, you see the first 5 lines of the data frame. If we wanted to show the first 3 lines, you could do a (3), and it would show the first 3 lines. Let me just clear out this data to make it a little easier. The other function that's kind of convenient is what's called the tail function, which I'm sure you can guess what that does. It shows the last lines of the data frame you're working in. And it's just a way to inspect it. It's not that important, but I often use it just to make sure that the data I'm working with is the exact data I want. So let's go on to 3.2. Now we will show the names or the column names of our data, and that is just using the names function here. And that will be, again, it looks similar to the head function. Within the names function, we just put the name of our data frame, which is df, and it should print all of the columns. So state, vote, income, and so if we go to our data frame, we see that that's exactly the same information. If we wanted to look at the other data frame that we uploaded, df arrest, all we type in is df arrest into that names function, and it will show us the columns from that data frame. So what other data frame you have uploaded here, you can use the names in the head function. Now moving on to 3.3, we can also display summary statistics. That will be the mean, median, information like that. And again, very similar to the names and head function, you just type summary, brackets, and within those brackets, the name of the data frame. So let's try to run it. And it shows up. For all of the different columns, it gives the information for the min, median, mean, and max information that will be useful on your assignments. And so again, we can just do df arrest, and if we want to show that one as well, You can look at the summary statistic for the DFRS, and we'll show you the different summary statistics for the different columns in that data frame. Now moving on, the last thing I wanted to show you is how to actually select individual columns from the data frame. So if we wanted to, for example, select just the age column rather than the whole data frame, what we would do is the name of the data frame, $, the name of that column. So df vote, if you run that, you'll see all this data show up here, and that's just every single piece of information in that column. The reason we want to do that is because we can actually put that within a function. So this function is called the mean function, and we put in the df, again followed by that $, followed by the name of the column that we want to see. And then if we put that within the mean function, it will actually show the mean for that specific column. Now we can do the exact same thing with the SD function, which is the standard deviation, and that will show the standard deviation of whatever column it is that you put in here. So you can change this to vote, standard deviation vote. You can put in any other information you want in there, and it will show you the standard deviation for whatever column you chose from whatever data frame that you chose. So that was a lot to cover today. Sorry we went quite fast, but if you have any questions, please feel free to show up to my office hours, which will be on Thursdays.